everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Bottom Line. I'm your host, Lauren Kalil. Our show is brought to you by Vuori. I have an unhealthy amount of joggers, but Vuori's performance joggers, they take the cake as the softest, most comfortable pants. Make sure to check out the description below for 20% off of your first purchase. On today's episode, it's just me and Brian. We're here to discuss our women's division composite power rankings. Some other guys were involved. PC slept through his alarm, but the show must go on, Brian.
That's right. And in case you guys missed it, yesterday we did the men's division where we talked about kind of what this is and what this isn't. So we, a group of six of us, the two of us, Patrick Clark, Tommy Marquez, Chase Ingraham, and Chad Schroeder, all right after the Last Chance Qualifier, put down a preliminary list of our power rankings individually for the men and then the women. We put those all together and we come up with a composite rank. So this is the average rank for each athlete across the six of us, and then we score them against each other, and then we have kind of a preliminary look at what the field might eventually look like once the games happen. After doing that, we noticed that there were some outliers. Each one of us had ranked certain athletes higher or lower relative to the rest of the group. And so we asked each analyst to write about two athletes for whom that was the case. So Lauren and I will go through the athletes that we had that were kind of outside of the norm in terms of projections. And then maybe we'll give PC a hard time about some of his picks. But since he's not
That's
here.
That's what makes the show fun. Pick on PC when he's not here to defend himself.
That's right. Hopefully he's biking or something.
All
anyway,
right.
We'll start with Lauren. And so, Lauren, on the positive side here, you have Lucy Campbell, a rookie coming out of Europe, ranked 13th. The group had her coming in at 23rd. So what do you see in Lucy Campbell?
Honestly, like maybe this is just me holding on to Wodapalooza and not wanting to like forget about her incredible performance there. But she was able to get fourth on such a tough women's field. And before that, nobody really knew who she was. So this was like the start of her season to me, was that incredible performance at Wodapalooza. We know that sometimes rookies, they make an incredible performance at the games. I mean, I'm not trying to compare her to Mal O'Brien because I think last year Mal's rookie performance was something that we won't necessarily see this year. But I do think that Lucy Campbell is going to have a couple home runs this year. And I think that even her just being 10 points away from the podium at Lowlands really gives her momentum going into the games field. As we mentioned with rookies, though, you never really know how they're going to perform with all of the different variables at the games, and especially potentially 15 events or so. But I do think that she's going to have a really good performance.
Yeah, I mean, Wodapalooza is kind of an interesting conversation because a lot of athletes will have a performance at Wodapalooza, either good or bad, and then their season will not really reflect that. It's not always the case. You have guys like, Vellner and Olsen and people like in the past, Tia and Sarah Sigmundsdottir, that are going to do well at all these competitions. But you do occasionally have these athletes that finish like 25th or lower at Wodapalooza, and then they show up in the top 15 at the games or the other way around. So I'll be curious to see kind of on which side of the coin Lucy falls in terms of that. For myself,
who's your high ranking?
Yeah, I had I wasn't actually the highest ranking on this athlete, but I had Paige Semenza ranked 23rd. The composite rank was 27th. PC actually had her ranked all the way up at 16th, Semenza. And the thing that I like about Semenza is kind of twofold. She does have some games experience. She's been at the games twice in the past. She didn't necessarily do great there, usually being just around the 30th place, but she looked awesome at semifinals. That was a really difficult semifinal where we saw Ariel Lowen miss out on qualifying for the games altogether, only to go on and dominate the Last Chance Qualifier. And she only finished behind Haley Adams, who we projected 5th on these composite rankings, and Alexis Raptis, who we projected 10th. And yet we have her all the way down here in 27th. So if she's maybe improved to perform at the semifinal that way, I think there's a chance that she could have her best games yet and move up to be flirting with that top 20 line once things are all settled at the end of the weekend.
Do you think that, obviously we talk about how competitive the men's field is, but for the women's field, do you think it's tougher or easier rather for women to like break into that top 20, top 15 than when we look at the men's field?
Yeah, I think this year in particular, that's definitely the case. I mean, from the top 20 last year, we have Annie Thorsdottir, who's on the team side of things. Kristen Holte has retired. We have Emma Tall and Emma Carey, who are both injured and not a part of this season. And then Katrin David's daughter didn't make it. So there are 5 open spots in the top 20 already, whereas on the men's side, there were only 2. And even when you look at some of the athletes inside that top 20 for the women from last season, I don't think they're necessarily as well established as a lot of those men are. Some of them made it up there for their first time, or some of them had their best season last year ever. And we'll see if they can, improve on that, or if maybe that was the outlier. So I do think there's a good chance for someone like Semenza, who even wasn't in that field last year, to come in and make a pretty big play. I mean, there's 15 women rookies in the field, and she's definitely got an advantage on them in terms of experience alone. And she's probably coming off, some confidence through semifinals, and she went early in the semifinal season as well. So she's had a lot of time to ramp up and prepare for this. And as a veteran, that's a big deal. All right, let's go to the opposite side of the coin. Harder to talk about, but it happens.
Yes.
So in this case, Lauren, you have veteran Thuri Helgadottir ranked 23rd, and the composite ranking comes out to 15th. Now, she is one of those athletes who had her best ever CrossFit Games last year, and you don't see her repeating that performance this time around?
No, I know that we've seen her finish in the top 20 at the games 4 straight times. Like you said, last year was her best finish, but even though she had those 2 impressive event wins at strength and depth, which I think gave her a bit of momentum, and I wouldn't be shocked if she does have another really good finish this year at the games. I'm looking at some of the rookies, and I'm looking at some of like the women in the top 10, and I just don't know that this is going to be her year. I think that a couple of people are going to sneak past her. Like I was speaking about the Lucy Campbells, we mentioned Alexis Raptis. I just wonder, how is she going to fare against some of these younger athletes? It's a conversation we have all the time, is the veterans versus the next up and coming, the next generation. So I guess we'll see, but that's where I ranked her.
Well, that's actually a perfect segue into the person who falls into this category for me, which is actually tied with her on our rankings here, is Emma Lawson. And obviously, Emma is a rookie this year. She's one of the younger athletes in the field. I had her ranked 25th, as you can see there. Patrick also had her outside the top 20. And yeah, you had her all the way up to 10. So we had a 15-point spread.
My money's on the rookies.
It's one of the bigger spreads that we're going to see. And, I don't want to take anything away from what Emma Lawson did at the Atlas Games. It was very impressive to watch her there, composure under that pressure environment. I mean, she chose to compete individually this year, and if you don't perform at the semifinal stage, that's the end of your season. And she knows that she could have made it in the teenage division, so that didn't phase her at all. She did very, very well. The thing is, and we've talked about that field wasn't super strong, and in fact, outside of Emma Lawson, the other 4 Atlas Games qualifiers, no one on this panel ranked any of them better than 21st. And out of the 24 available rankings for those athletes, 15 of them were 30th or worse. And that's coming out of North America, which is, usually has a fairly good representation at the games. So as a group, we're pretty low on that field, but most of you guys are high on Emma Lawson. I just feel like I need to see her do it at the top level. She did beat Thuri Helgadottir at Dubai by a few points. I think she was 9th and Thuri was 10th, but she didn't really beat anyone else in that field that I'm looking at as a contender for a top 20 at the games. So even though she has done well in some competitions this year, I still need to see her prove it on the biggest stage against the best women in the sport before I put her up in the top 20.
Okay. Any other athletes that we want to talk about from maybe PC's rankings? Chase, Chad, Tommy?
Well, PC always has some fun rankings out there. And in this case, I wouldn't necessarily say this is a fun one, but he has Amanda Barnhart ranked all the way down at 17th. And the rest of us had her 7th, 9th, 9th, and 11th. So this is a bit of an outlier. And I think it speaks a lot to what you've been talking about, which is there are a bunch of women, young women or rookies in the field who do have fairly impressive resumes and a lot of potential. And when you're an athlete like Amanda Barnhart, she's not the most flashy athlete. She has some strong suits on some lifting events for sure. But if you look at her career at the games, she's regularly found her way inside that top 10. And I think that this is a bold move by Patrick to put her that far down. If she missed the top 10 by a few spots, I could possibly see it. But I think that putting her down at 17th is a little bit harsh.
And I think something else with Amanda Barnhart, you said, I think you just said she like isn't flashy, and that's totally true, because even when we watch her at some of the semifinals or the competition, I feel like she's always flying under the radar. Like she's not on camera a lot. She doesn't do a lot of interviews. And I don't know for whatever reason that is, but she's a name that I think people do forget about. But yeah, we both have her in our top 10. I think that she will still be able to crack the top 10, but Patrick thinks other people are going to sneak on up.
And then the other one I wanted to kind of hone in on, it's a pick that Tommy made here. So he's got Brooke Wells, who we had coming in at 17th on these rankings. He's got her at 9th. He's the only one who put her inside the top 10. You and I both have her in the mid-teens at 13th and 14th. Yeah. And then we see the other three guys all have her at 20th or worse. What are your feelings about Brooke? Obviously, we saw what happened at semifinals, and it's been a little bit of time since then. What's your confidence level about her chances to maybe make Tommy's prediction true here and find her way inside this top 10?
So my thoughts about her are almost opposing thoughts. So in one hand, she's working at Proven, she's training with Tia, and I think the environment in itself and surrounding yourself with good mindset, good training, people that are the cream of the crop, I think that really says something about how much your fitness can elevate. But then when we saw her at the semifinals almost not make it and almost be sent to the Last Chance Qualifier, that's where my doubts started to come in. I can't remember what workout it was, but Danielle Brandon ended up beating her. But do you remember Brooke was in the lead? I think there was a run in it. But anyways, you just saw her start to fade. So I wonder if that was like a pacing problem. Maybe she was taking a risk. I don't really know. But her injury last year, how recovered is she? I mean, we've seen her snatch, we've seen her overhead squat, we've seen her do some of those things that involve stability of the elbow. But I just think that there's a couple of variables that like counteract each other for me that I'm not really sure what we're going to see at the games this year.
Yeah, it's well said. I think that emotions will be high for her. They were at semifinals. I'm hopeful that she can get a couple events that are maybe, mentally challenging for her early in the week, and that she can put those like doubts that she's certainly going to have to rest and say, no, I am back. I am here. I can do this stuff. Brooke was on pace to have her best games finish ever last year, so she certainly has the potential in terms of fitness to do this. It's just a matter of where she at mentally with competing, knowing that, what happened last year at the games. And then also, is her fitness able to get back on par to compete? A lot of these women that you have to go through to get into the top 10 have had a full run of a healthy season. So I think that where we ended up with her kind of makes sense. And it's not surprising to see a couple people higher and a couple people lower on a Brooke Wells. Speaking of that, I think we'll do one more. The biggest spread of any athlete on this roster is Dani Speegle. So I actually had her at the lowest ranking of 35th. Chase had her down at 30th, and then your ranking of her is all the way up to 11th. And so we see
she impressed me at the semifinals.
Yeah, and so we see this
like her going head to head with Mel. Yeah, like that's really what drove my ranking for her.
And I think that that's totally justified. I mean, we've seen Dani Speegle in her career do some incredible things, have some really good competitions. But I think where Chase and I are probably leaning on here is that she has yet to put it together at the games. And for me, at least personally, it's hard for me to want to give one of those top 20 spots to someone that I don't have the confidence is going to necessarily finish the weekend. And I hope that I'm wrong about that, because I think that Dani adds some flair and excitement and drama to a lot of events that, fans will thrive on. She's a very popular athlete. She's very boisterous. She's strong. She's good in some of the gymnastic stuff. And I think that it would be great if she's able to do that and kind of put that stigma aside. But it's one of these things where until she does it, again, kind of like I said with Emma Lawson, I'm a little bit hesitant to move her to up high in the rankings. And so I think here, this is the nice thing about doing the composite rankings is you get the highs, you get the lows, and she winds up sort of in the middle, which is probably where she belongs, right around that 20 spot.
People have to earn your rankings.
Yeah, I'm a little bit. I mean, I do acknowledge the fact that there are rookies that can make a breakthrough, and there are athletes that can have really impressive seasons here and there. But the way that the sport mostly goes is that the best people find their way to the top most of the time, And even though Dani's shown her capacity to do that in competitions that are 5, 6, and 7 events, she's yet to be able to do it in a competition that's 10 to 15 events. Any other thoughts on the women's field, Lauren, before we wrap it up?
No, I think that honestly, my bottom line is that it's just going to be a battle between the rookies and the vets for me. Can enough rookies sneak through to bring some of those veterans that are known at the games down the leaderboard?
Yeah, and I think the bottom line for me is, we kind of see we have Tia Claire Toomey at the top of this field, and we know that she's going to run away with it. But everything else on the women's side is so competitive this year, and I really think that the 2 through 10 spots on the women's field is going to be one of the most exciting battles with a lot of relevant athletes in the race that we've had in quite some time. And there's athletes that'll be finishing around 10th that, with if a couple things had gone a little differently, could have been threatening for that podium. So I'm pretty excited for the women's field. Obviously, what Tia's doing is historic, but the rest of the ladies are really tight when you look at it both on paper and what they've been able to do on the competition floor.
It makes for a good event for all of us to be watching.
Oh yeah, this should be a really good year.
Thanks, Brian. We'll see you next time. And thanks for hosting today. Another fun time.
I feel like we shared that.
Yeah, a little bit. Back and forth. Bye, Brian.
See ya.